Good day, students. I am Master the Genius, and today I want to walk us through literature. And under literature, I want us to check types of repetition in poetry. Let us go into it. Number one, I want to share with us is anaphora. Anaphora. What is anaphora? Anaphora is repetition of a clause or phrase at the beginning of successive lines or clauses. I come again. Anaphora is repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive lines or clauses. I give you an example. I am a Nigerian. I am an African. I am a man. Now, you see that there is repetition at the beginning. At the beginning, right? There's repetition of I am. I am at the beginning. This kind of repetition is called anaphora in poetry or in literature. The second one I want to share with us is epiphora. Epiphora is like the opposite of anaphora. So while anaphora happens at the beginning, epiphora happens at the end. All right. So what is epiphora? Epiphora is the repetition of a word or phrase at the end of successive lines or clauses. I come again. Epiphora is repetition of a word or phrase at the end of successive lines or clauses. I give you example. Just like we have it in the Bible. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. Now, what do we have here? We have repetition of as a child. As a child. But this repetition happens at the end of each line, which are successive. These are successive lines. The meaning of successive lines or clauses is that those lines comes, after one another. All right? Said yes. So here we have repetition of as a child, as a child. All right? I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. So this is epiphora in literature. That's the second one. The third one I want to share with us is alliteration. Alliteration is very common. Alliteration is the repetition of initial consonant sound. Alliteration is repetition of initial consonant sound. A very popular example. You can have something like Father Francis fried 5 fishes. What do you have here? This repetition of, at the initial. At the initial. Note, F is consonant. That is one. Then, secondly, the repetition of this F happens at the beginning, at the initial of each word. Of each word. So, this is alliteration. This is alliteration. Alliteration is repetition of initial consonant sound. The fourth one is what we call assonance. Assonance is repetition of vowel sound. However, this happens in the middle. In alliteration, I told you is repetition of initial consonant sound. But for this one, this is repetition of vowel sound, but you will always find it in the middle of those words. Like you may have something like boot, loot, maybe the man in the boot, the man in the boot, or whatever you can call this, the man in the boot, loot. Are you getting it? So you are seeing repetition of this. So this alphabet is vowel. This sound is vowel sound. Vowel sound. And it was repeated. So that is assonance. We also have a repetition. We also have a repetition called consonance. just as the name implies. This is also repetition of consonant sound. But the difference between consonant and alliteration is that just like assonance, consonant happens in the middle of a word or at the end of a word. Yes, consonants happen in the middle of a word or at the end of a word. Like you can have lumpy, bumpy. Lumpy, bumpy. What do you see here? This is repetition of a consonant sound, but it happens at the end. But in the case of alliteration, what you are going to find is something like sun, shade. You see, repetition of S, S. This is consonant. It either happen in the middle. In fact, look at it. It either happen in the middle of word, or it happens at the end. So we have repetition of PY, repetition of PY. That is consonants. But if the repetition of the consonant sound is at the initial, which means at the beginning of each word, what we are going to call that is alliteration. So don't confuse consonants with alliteration. Another one we have is refrain. Refrain. Refrain is repetition of a group of lines or group of words at interval. Refrain is repetition of a group of lines or words at interval. And I'll give you a typical example. In a poem called Once Upon a Time, Once Upon a Time by Gabriel Okara, you see, at interval, there was repetition of once upon a time, once upon a time. And another typical example of refrain is what we see in Christian in books. So where once upon a time, the word once upon a time was repeated in Once Upon a Time by Gabriel Okara, that type of repetition is what we call refrain. So refrain is repetition of a group of words or lines at interval. All right, and we also have parallelism. Parallelism. That's the last one for today. Parallelism. Parallelism is repetition of grammatical structure. Repetition of grammatical structure. For example, you have something like to live is Christ, to die is gain. Now you will realize that the structure of this first clause is the same thing as this. So parallelism deals more with structure, not necessarily word. You can use different words. You see that, in fact, the similar words we have here is, to. But in fact, we may have a case where there may not really be any similar words, in those clauses. But look at the structure. You see that the structure, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, the structure of this clause is the same as this. So parallelism is repetition of grammatical structure. So let us summarize the types of repetition in poetry again. So I told you that we have anaphora, we have epiphora, and I also told you we have alliteration. I told you we have consonance, assonance, refrain, or parallelism. Thank you.